and welcome back to another video. So let's talk about the Nintendo Switch and tariffs. So if you've been living under a rock, you will have heard of the tariffs that Trump placed on every country in the world, and penguins, and an American base. Yeah, they weren't well planned out or thought out. Well, actually, and they used ChatGPT to make this. So yeah, it's a shit show to say the least. Well, because of this, Nintendo has now had to cancel all pre-orders in the United States for the Nintendo Switch 2. And because they may need to increase the price due to tariffs. Which, yeah, no big surprise. Yeah, implement tariffs, and bear in mind, profit margins on consoles are slim. Like, Sony with a PlayStation 5, when it first launched, was not profitable. So I'm not going to say, oh, Nintendo's already losing money on the Switch too, but I'm gonna say that at best they're not making much money off it, and that does work out when you consider how much something like a Steam Deck cost. So the profit margins on the Switch already probably aren't the largest. So, and then you have people like Boundary Break and RGT85, which I do like RGT85. I genuinely enjoy his stuff. Like, it's not like I'm just like a random hater. I have, as you can see from these red bars at the bottom of the thumbnails, I have watched a lot of his videos, especially recently. So it's not like I'm just like a random hater or anything. I'm a frequent viewer of his stuff. And he's basically, and they're basically saying, oh, Nintendo made a lot of money with the Switch 1. Why can't they just eat the cost of the tariffs for the Switch 2? It would be like 50 bucks or 50 bucks or whatever. They can eat that. It's not going to be 50 bucks. So let's say, let's do a quick little bit of maths here. The Switch 2, without Grand Mario Kart World, is $400 US. Now, assuming that these are going to be tariffed using the Japanese tariffs, because Nintendo is a Japanese country, so they may count as that, or they might, or wherever they come from, like wherever warehouse they come from in the world. But right now, the tariffs that Japan has is 46%. So we take 400, we divide it by 100, which is obviously 4. Then we multiply that by 46. That's $184 per Switch. That's almost $200 per Switch 2. And that's before you get into the material cost. That would be such a big loss for Nintendo. Every Nintendo Switch. And it's like, oh, but they'll make up for it with game sales. It's like, but bear in mind, Nintendo didn't vote Trump in. Americans did. You Americans voted Trump in. And it's not like, you can't be like, oh, we didn't know he would tariff everybody. On this campaign trail, he was saying, I'm going to tariff the shit out of everybody. You knew who you were voting for, unless you voted for Kamala Harris, in which case I do actually legitimately feel bad for you, because you are in the middle of a massive shit show, and it is none of your own fault. But if you didn't vote or voted for Donald Trump, this is entirely your fault. So yes, you should pay for it, because you voted for Donald Trump. You knew he was going to do a shit ton of tariffs, and you knew, and if you took those two brain cells in your head and you rubbed them together, you would have been able to work out that that would also affect the Switch 2, Switch 1, probably Xbox consoles as well, because I'm very much doubt that Microsoft is actually manufacturing that shit in America. Sony, everything Sony makes, like everything Sony makes is going to cost more. Like, did you really not think this through? Well, obviously you didn't think it through because now you're having a massive hissy fit that your Switch 2 might cost more due to tariffs. Because let's say the Switch 2, like let's say Nintendo was breaking perfectly even with the Switch 2. And they sell 1 million units. So that's 1, 100, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million units in America. Actually, now let's be a bit. Let's do 100,000 units at launch day because I think 1 million is a bit overboard. That is 18,400,000 US dollars that they would lose. 18 million, and that, let's take a look at. Hold on, let's take a look at how much money GT claims Nintendo made.
$1 billion in profit.
Yeah, 4 billion. Okay, so 4 billion is a lot. So that's 18 million out. So if they used up literally every. So they wouldn't use up literally every penny of profit they made last. When was this? They made this in the whole of last year. So they wouldn't use up the whole of last year's profit. But you have to think that you still have to consider that 4 billion, they don't just have that sitting in a bank. They are reinvesting that 4 billion into making games and making hardware. So they don't just have 4 billion sitting in a bank that they can just go, okay, so we're going to use this 4 billion to eat up the cost of the tariffs. Because they don't. That's stupid. They don't. Like, companies don't just have all their money sat around in the bank. They're reinvesting it. They're making new factories. They're hiring more people, and they're making more shit. Basically, they don't just because if they just have this money sat around, then it's not doing anything. It's not, and they don't want their money just sat around not doing anything. They want to actually invest it into shit. So no, Nintendo. So Nintendo obviously does have, like, every company does have X amount of money stocked up in case they want to buy a company or whatever, like Microsoft's been doing. But again, Nintendo does not do that very often. That is something they really don't do very often. So they probably don't even have that big of a war chest, or like whatever you want to call it, like funds for buying out another company. But at the end of the day, calling Nintendo greedy for having, yes, an expensive console, but not an overly expensive console. It's not like it's barely any better than. It's not like they took the Switch OLED and basically just like gave it a little boost or anything. This is a massive leap forward. So, and it's not and like even RGT himself, he admitted that it's not that the Switch 2 being $400 is not crazy expensive considering its capabilities. Well, calling them greedy for that, while then going on to demand them to eat up the tariffs for you because you voted Trump in and you now regret it because you're going to have to pay more money for your Switch 2, is way more greedy than anything Nintendo has done with Switch 2. And yes, I agree that $80 USD for Mario Kart World right now does seem a little bit steep. But again, you could just get the bundle and then you save $30. So it's not like there's no way around that $80 price point. It's just like, no, Nintendo does not have a moral or any kind of obligation to pay the tariffs for you, because you voted Trump in. You knew about him wanting to tariff everybody. It's entirely America's fault. And there's no amount of whinging, crying, chanting, lower the price, that is ever going to change that. Because it is your fault. And there's nothing you Americans can do about it now, because you voted him in and he's ruining your country. Yeah, have fun with that.